Hello and welcome to Health, Wealth, and Happiness Mastery Training, Cryptocurrency Mastery with Charly 2. Such an honor to be on the journey with you. Imagine a world where you're playing your favorite game, maybe a couple hours a day, and you're creating currency. You're creating income from it, and you're getting paid as you're playing it real time. Imagine a world where you're working, and maybe it's an hourly gig, or your child is, or a friend of yours is, and as they work, every minute they work, their bank account is automatically going up. There's no more paydays. There's no more signed checks. You just clock in, and the currency, income, if you will, is established and flowing till you clock out. These are a couple of things that are going on right now with cryptocurrency. And if you don't know what cryptocurrency is, you're in the right place at the right time. We're going to start the way I kind of got fond for it and then got really deep down the rabbit hole for it. And that's by understanding the philosophy and the history of money, and then getting into how humans have basically corrupted money over time. There's a lot of history there for that. And then how cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, was invented to be an open, transparent way for exchanging income, exchanging money. And we'll break that all down for you today. By the end of this training, this is our Health, Wealth, and Happiness training, I'm going to give you a simple plan. Now remember, I'm not anything financial. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just educating on what the latest trends, the latest things you can do are, and what I have done personally, and you can feel free to model it. But I would also say to invest wisely and only invest, especially in cryptocurrency, with money you're okay to lose. It's kind of like gambling in that aspect. But it's very speculative at this point. As you probably have seen, there's been ups and downs with Bitcoin and the bigger currencies that are out there. And some people have lost their shirt on some of what we'll talk about as altcoins, alternative coins, and these kind of things. So just keep that in mind as we go through this. This particular training will set the stage for the history. We'll talk about how to bring it into your family in a good way. And then in our next training, our Business Internet Mastery training, we're going to dive deep into how you can monetize it and the security of it, and then assure that you have a very clear plan on how you may want to get involved with helping the world with it if you get ignited like I am about what's going on right now in the world. Very first thing I want to do is talk through a quote from H.G. Wells and a guy by the name of Robert Breedlove. If you're in my email list, you've seen a lot of his work. Robert Breedlove is what this one guy calls him is the Bitcoin Aristotle. He speaks so eloquently and pretty simply. You can get complicated. But what he shared in one of his interviews was this quote from H.G. Wells. And the quote is, "Civilization is a race between education and catastrophe." So I'll say that again if you're taking notes. Civilization is a race between education and catastrophe. And what's happening is digital currency, the natural evolution of how we exchange money through the lens of what's going on in the world right now. As you probably know, with PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, all these different apps, you can exchange money, and Apple Cash. You can exchange money by looking at somebody and going poof and send it to them like that. Like there's no dollars exchanged. It just happens. So what's happening right now is that there's a lot of momentum since 2009, actually, with Bitcoin, the world's very first cryptocurrency, and there's a lot of momentum with it. And the reason that we're even here talking about it is because the world, the free market around the world has said, something's got to change. Something's got to change in the way we're exchanging money. You may have seen it when you're working with anybody, if you're working with anybody around the globe, where you're trying to exchange money. It gets kind of hodgepodgey, takes time. The financial institutions, they got to talk to each other and work. It's not usually instantaneous unless you're using PayPal, especially if you're doing large transactions. And one of the big things that I'm just so excited about with cryptocurrency, specifically with Bitcoin, is that it can, and it does, handles transactions globally instantly. There's no faster way, at least from the studies I've seen, that you can take, let's just say $2 million from a person in Australia, put it in the account of a person in Florida, like me, like that. There's so much processing that has to go, and things that have to be cleared in the traditional financial institutions. So just kind of laying the land here as we think this through. That H.G. Wells quote is really critical. It's one of the reasons why I made this particular training sooner than I wanted to, meaning that I was hoping to start 2022 with it, but people were asking, and they're like, Char, what's the cryptocurrency? I need to get involved, or I need to not get involved. I need to just understand it. So as I said, let's go through big picture why, and we're going to start with the big picture why of the way I approach life. And I'll tell you what, cryptocurrency and my studies, and I've been studying at least 10 hours a week, taking massive notes. You have access to some of that. And if you want access to more of that, just let me know. I've got a couple opportunities for you as well. So let's start with the bigger picture, and then we'll kind of work our way down into how cryptocurrency has evolved, what it's become, and how it answers many of the world's questions and humanity's questions at this point. Sound cool? Thank you so incredibly much for being here. I hope you enjoy this training. I spent a lot of time really thinking it through for you to help you understand, A, cryptocurrency, but B, like what's going on in the world and what we really need to be considering and thinking through. That being said, there's 5 P's that I want to make sure we review because this is everything for what's going on as we get into our work today. Not only here, but in our other work. Purpose, passion, positivity, productivity, and profit. And when we think about life through the lens of these 5 P's, and how cryptocurrency has kind of connected these P's for me as well, is there a purpose behind cryptocurrency? And one of the things we're going to learn today is that cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin, is deflationary, and then there's other coins out there that have specific purposes to help the world be better. And there's a place online you can go, and I'll give you that address, coinmarketcap.com, and I'll make sure to link to that below, coinmarketcap.com. And you can learn about the other types of cryptocurrencies, and then you can go to their actual websites, or their white papers as they're called, to understand what the drive is, what they're all about. So many of the cryptocurrencies out there are built to go through and help the world be better somehow. And their intention's very clear, and because it's in the cryptocurrency world, typically the things that are going on in terms of the way it's being approached, unlike in the traditional financial realm, where it's kind of hidden through central banks and so on, this is all basically transparent, so you can see how money flows. So think about this as an illustration. One of the biggest problems I've had with a lot of the volunteer organizations is some of them aren't too transparent, most of them actually, are not too transparent in how they spend the money they receive. So at an anonymous level for who's contributing, you can see in a public ledger, basically a public spreadsheet, all the transactions that have happened, and you can also track like where they're going. And this is some of the things that are going on in cryptocurrency. So a lot of people are leveraging these for very purposeful means. What I love about cryptocurrency and my passion and positivity and productivity towards it is that we're seeing the evolution of it unfold right here and right now in the world in major ways. What does that mean? It means a lot of people have said, and one of the objections and questions I was asked was, wait, how do you actually use it? Just recently, and I've got a picture for you here, show it to you. Just recently, Voyager, which is an online trading platform and a wallet that we'll go over, that's the one I recommend, it's easiest to follow, some of the other ones are very complicated, has just introduced a Voyager Debit card that you can spend just like cash. That means that you don't have to have your money in a US currency-based account or a euro account or whatever that would be. It can spend right from your crypto account. Does that make sense? The biggest problem, one of the biggest objections people have had is, how do I spend cryptocurrency? And how do I get into it? So we'll cover that, but I just wanted to kind of show you that. The other thing I want to make sure you're seeing, and this was very apparent to me just recently, as I was at the Rolling Stones concert in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Mercedes-Benz Theater, and then a few days before, stadium, I guess, arena. A few days before that, I was at the Metallica concert. It's the very first set of concerts I've been to where this was the policy. Card and mobile payment only. You convert your cash to a card at the kiosk. And what it was is you put money into this kiosk and it gives you a payment card. Then you can use that to buy beer and food and all that kind of stuff. So I want to kind of just paint the frame here. A couple things right out of the gate, and I hope you find this valuable. One, how do you spend cryptocurrency? Debit cards are coming out. And I've already got mine on order for the Voyager debit card to make that currency flow in real time when you're at a restaurant or a store or whatever you're trying to purchase. And if you haven't noticed, cash, coin, these kind of things are getting minimized in the world. Does that all make sense? This is a key indicator of that. So going back to the 5 Ps here, when we look at all these things and we think about how the world basically evolved, Satoshi Nakamoto, I think is how you say it, the person or people, it's an anonymous set of, we're not sure if it's a person or people, created the white paper for Bitcoin and helped you understand how it would use a technology called blockchain to be very transparent, and we'll talk about that, to put money back and forth, to transfer, to create transactions. And that was in like 2008, 9, somewhere in there. And then it evolved, it got built. So what's going on here as we think about this through the lens of these big purposeful Ps is that we've got a platform created in a world, and you can look at the news and see what's going on in terms of different countries and how controlling they are of their citizens and so on. We have a currency, a digital set of currency. Bitcoin is the big one, the biggest one with the biggest market cap, that is built to be transparent, open. They're saying non-corruptible because it runs on a distributed network, and they're all checking the transactions to make sure they're legit. So there's a couple great videos that will help you understand how the technicalities of that work, and I'll make sure to link to them below. Also, I want to make sure that we do a little bit of a description of it as we get into some of the fundamentals. That being said, the 5 Ps, and I love that cryptocurrency and the way that it's handling so many of the bigger issues that humanity's running into right now gets me wired up and fired up to be more purposeful about how we're working internationally for transactions. The purpose piece about some of these coins are built to do good in the world in major ways. There's a Miami coin that's entire goal is people can invest in their city and it puts the money back into the city. And I just telling you that gives me chills because it's like exactly what a thematic currency. Think of it like a stock. A stock in Miami, instead of having a stock, this is a currency that's built, called the Miami coin, I think is what it's called. And you can invest in it to demonstrate through your transaction, through your income, through your spend, that you want Miami to thrive. You feel the connection here? So it's a little abstract. We'll dial this in as we move along. That being said, let's go ahead and jump right into the training now. And I'll be referring to these 5 Ps at the top as we do this. The very first piece is we really need to understand the history of currency, the history of money. And there's 5 different phases. So the very first phase, this goes way back in time, was trading. Hey, I want that horse. Would you take this cow? And then poof, there was a trade going on from that perspective. I want that shirt. Would you take these pants? There's a trade going on from that perspective. So you can do your own work in terms of the history to sort that out. But then we eventually evolved into coins and what they classify as hard money through metals. Sometimes it was coins through metals. Other times it was beads that were served as like coins, different kinds of scarcity in beads. And there was different values associated with it in some parts of the world. But the evolution over the last 5,000 years has been primarily in the trade of different coins. Different coins of different sizes and of different metals had different values. And that's still going on today in the form of pennies, nickels, quarters, half dollars here in the United States, those kinds of things. But it's really, if you've noticed, especially in line of the pandemic, that stuff's being phased out. I don't know if you've seen it, but I've seen it where they're saying we have a coin shortage because of the pandemic. We aren't handing out coins. And it's possible that the virus could live on a coin for a while. I'm not exactly sure what the science says there, but it's just not available. So we're seeing this evolution away from coins. Number 3 is paper money. And what I really want to make sure you get, and there's so much more depth in some of the links that I'll provide for you, is that at some point in history, it became too much to move metal, coins, especially as people acquired more wealth, that governing institutions like our government, the Federal Reserve is the tool, the organization that creates the paper certificates, that up until 1971 had a direct one-to-one relationship with gold, as the gold standard was a thing. So let's kind of break this down for you a little bit. As coins evolved, gold became the most scarce and the most valuable coin. And as we realized, as we were a globalizing society, that we needed to move money across borders, it became painful, if not like nearly impossible, to move a ton of gold from here to there, based on the wealth that was created and so forth. So what the government did, and I think this was in the last 100 or so years, is they created a paper certificate that was essentially an IOU for gold. And that paper certificate became the dollar. And originally, I think the dollar was pegged $1, 1 gold, something like that. And the idea of it is that these paper certificates were much more portable and movable. Gold didn't have to be transferred, but you could redeem them for gold at any time. And the government guaranteed that you'd be able to redeem them for government or for gold at any time. Now that all came to a crashing halt in 1971 when Richard Nixon stopped the gold standard and said, from now on, we're simply going to use paper currency and there is no connection to gold. You can imagine that freaked a few people out, especially some other countries. And they're like, wait a minute, wait, what? But we guaranteed that this money has value and we're able to use it and you're able to transact with it. So somehow the world accepted this. There's an amazing website called WTFhappened in1971.com. And I would challenge you to go look at it. It's got all the data you need to see from the moment that the gold standard was removed, where it was a paper currency tied to gold, like pinned to gold, and that went away with President Nixon, and what happened in the world because of it. The essence of it, and I really want you to get this because this is a big part of cryptocurrency and why it's one of its reasons for having the legs and the ignition, if you will, to evolve as a digital worldwide currency that can really serve, is that the rich got richer and the poor got poorer, and it typically was sort of introduced through inflation. I'm introducing a new term if you haven't heard of inflation. And basically what it is that in a we'll say a perfect society, there's a limited number of, or a almost limited number of available currency. So it has a scarcity to it. And maybe it increases a little bit every year. Let's go to gold for a minute. If you had gold and it was, let's just say there was $1 million of gold available. Every year people could mine more, but there wasn't more than 2% more value mined per year. There still is a scarcity there. What happened when we switched to a paper currency and we got rid of the gold standard is that it gave, I love this saying, and this is really powerful for me in terms of why cryptocurrency has become very popular in my mind. There's a saying, and it's right here, that there's an irresistible urge for control. Humans cannot, the best of humans can't even do it, apparently. History shows this. Humans cannot resist the urge for control and even corruption. Like some humans can, but overall, history shows that it's just not possible. Now, what does that actually mean in the lens of what we're talking through? I realize this is getting a little bit complicated, but the concept is this. Today, the Federal Reserve, the people that make the money, that print the money that goes into circulation in the United States, can just say, yeah, we need another $1 trillion, and they print $1 trillion, and they go into a database, literally a database server, if you will, and it's at the Fed, and they enter in line items that inject that new cash into flow, into the world. And the problem with that is when you introduce new cash, if you study history, is that it makes inflation grow. And sometimes there's hyperinflation, which is kind of what's going on right now. And what that means is, if you think about it through the lens of day-to-day life, if you go in and buy a loaf of bread today, and inflation does its thing, a year from now that bread might be 10 or 20% more, or 5% more, something along those lines. And inflation is typically a bad thing. Robert Breedlove does a really great job of helping us understand that people do not like being stolen from through inflation. And the easiest way to think about that is if you had a mattress, and I think my grandpa's dad did this, coming out of the Depression and so on, they would stuff their mattress with money. And their focus was to assure that that money retained value over time, that it still had the spending power that was almost equal to what it was when they stuffed the mattress or continued to stuff the mattress with it. Through inflation, though, if you had $100,000 on a mattress and you had it there 10 years, that money would devalue because there's more money in circulation. So the concept is, and I hope you grab onto this, is that through the printing of more money or through the lack of scarcity in money, boom, inflation happens and the money you have in the bank, if you're just holding on to it, loses value. Now think about this through the lens of people working paycheck to paycheck. They don't actually save money. And they may be earning the same amount of money, but year over year, if there's a 2, 3, 5% inflation, that amount, unless they're getting 2, 3, 5% raises, that amount they're making has less buying power through time. Does that make sense? So the point of everything I'm trying to cover here is this, that paper money, when it was disconnected from the gold standard, had the availability for people, humans, and I'll write this in for you, to, have more control and corrupt the money supply. So when we think about all these things, cryptocurrency and what it's created solves these issues. I'm going to park it there for a minute. I want to finish our thought on part 1, and then we'll step into how cryptocurrency solves the issues and go from there. So, adult learning theory says, let's review what we've covered. We've talked about the history of money. Way back in the day, you were bartering the shirt for some shorts, a horse for a cow, and that's how transactions happened. Hey, I need that thing and I have this thing. Do you want it? Cool, all right. Then we developed this idea of a standardized currency, and that was typically regional. A standardized currency, and it's usually through coins or through beads or something like that. Eventually, that evolved into gold, silver, these kinds of things. Gold won as the thing with the most scarcity. There it became the most valuable. Simple rule of economics. Most scarcity, most valuable. Had the highest buying power. At some point, we realized that it was too hard to move gold around and coin around, so we changed that to a paper currency that had a representation that this dollar, if you will, is redeemable for a certain amount of gold, silver, and so forth. And then the paper currency became the thing. Continuing that journey, number 4, much like that idea of trading a cow for a horse, in the world of Amazon, for example, it's basically a spreadsheet. You move money from your account to Amazon's account and money back, but it's not like physical currency. It's a digital exchange. Does that make sense? You buy something on Amazon, you move money from your account to their account, and it's not like you're going to Amazon's distribution center and handing them a $20 bill. It happens automatically, and that money's transferred through digital transaction. And then the 5th piece is purely digital currency. And that's exactly what cryptocurrency is. And one of the types of cryptocurrency is Bitcoin. Does that all make sense? The evolution? So what we're seeing here, and a lot of people that I've been talking with, especially of the older generations, are like, I'm never getting into cryptocurrency and so on. I'm like, you're kind of already in it if you're working where you're transferring money digitally, meaning that you're in the digital realm already. You just happen to not be using cryptocurrencies as your core basis of value. You're using the US dollar or something like that, those lines. Does that make sense? This is a little too deep. So that's the concept here and where we're at today. What we have to keep in mind is the moment scarcity is removed and you give people control, in the case of what I talked through a moment ago, you give people control of the money supply, history shows humans don't have a good track record with handling it. They work out ways and they justify those ways to essentially rob people through inflation and other mechanisms and manipulate the money supply and those kinds of things. So what I'm trying to do here is paint the frame for you that in so many ways our monetary system so far has worked well. If you go to WTF Happened in 1971, you'll see when we came off the gold standard and removed the level of scarcity, and I'll go over the 5 properties of money, scarcity is one of them in a minute, all kinds of things started to happen. And that was 50 years ago, 1971. And what happened through the lens of that is we've been in what, I love the way Robert Breedlove calls it, a 50-year experiment where the rich get richer and the poor literally have less and less of a chance because they typically do not store their money in appreciating assets like houses and real estate, whatever else, like stocks and bonds and so on. They're living paycheck to paycheck. And the value of the money they're making is shrinking on a daily basis due to inflation and money manipulation. Does that all make sense? And I'm not trying to make judgment to this. I'm just kind of reflecting on the reality of history here If you do your studies, and I'll make sure to link to things below, you can see this in action. WTF happened in 1971 will help you understand this. Does that all make sense so far? Another way to think of it, and this was a really powerful illustration, is imagine when we think about a standardized measurement around the world, the meter or the kilogram. Imagine a ruler, like a king of a certain country, saying, you know what, in our country the meter is this long. In your country and the rest of the countries the meter is this long. And the king can arbitrarily control how long a meter is. Like that completely debases that value of measurement. And that's what's going on in currency through the lens of us printing more income, printing more paper, if you will, introducing more dollars into the thing. We're just changing the measurement of money. So Bitcoin is the metric system of money. Think of it that way. And why is Bitcoin the metric system of money? I'm getting chills telling you this because this is so exciting to me, and I hope I'm not losing you. Here's where we get into a little bit of the history of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So the first thing I want you to consider is that money has 5 properties. First, it's divisive, meaning it's dividable. Divisive. So you may want to be taking notes. If I'm writing on the board, you better be taking notes. Second, it's durable. Third is recognizable. Recognizable. Fourth, it's portable. And fifth, we've talked a lot about this so far, it's got scarcity. So let's walk through these 5 types of money, and then we'll talk through what the problems are with the current currencies and the availability, if there are any, and then we'll talk about what cryptocurrency is and why it solves for these. First of all, it's divisive, and that means that you can take $10 down to $5 to $1, down to a quarter, down to a nickel, down to a penny in the United States, for example. And it has that divisibleness. Second is durable, like it lasts. The paper it's printed on doesn't melt, that kind of thing. The coins don't melt unless you heat them up. Third is recognizable. It's clearly indicated on it what it's for, how it's there, and it's so apparent in its appearance what it is and the amount it is in that regard. And it's accepted by people through that lens. Fourth, it's portable. Portable. And that's become an issue as the world globalized in the last 100 years. Is the physicality of moving gold from the United States to another country required lots of heavy lifting and movement across an ocean. And that wasn't as easily portable as what you and I know today is going into a bank account and wiring somebody money or paying somebody via Zelle or PayPal or something like that. So you see how we've gone away from the physicality of money into the purely digital currency, purely digital exchange of currency. That makes sense? And then fifth, it's scarce, has a scarcity to it. And the reason that's in red is because we do not have a hard limit scarcity on the US dollar. And there's the window for inflation when our Federal Reserve, for example, decides to print more money and put it in circulation and then register it in the database. Now, you probably noticed if you're in the United States, every dollar bill has a serial number on it, and those serial numbers get tracked in the system, and then some come out of circulation and more go into circulation. That's just how the Fed works. I had the absolute honor of touring the Fed before COVID in Atlanta, and it was really neat to see how they do what they do. What's happened, though, is without scarcity, like a hard limit on scarcity, the issue becomes, you guessed it, the amount of money you have in the bank, if it's not invested, devalues over time. And Robert Breedlove, and I've shared this before in our training today, Robert Breedlove and so many others are tired, say that the world is tired of being stolen from through inflation. Does that land for you? Does that make sense? Thank you so incredibly much for being here. This subject can be tricky because it's very complicated, but I've been trying to simplify it for you through the lens of the history of the world and then the properties of money and where our sort of downfalls have been, just because we're human, and what this new digital, it's not terribly new in the bigger scheme of currencies in the last decade or so, this new digital currency, cryptocurrency, the reason why it's gained such momentum is because people see it. One of the reasons is because people see it, especially Bitcoin, has a very hard limit of 21 million Bitcoin. That's all that's in circulation. And many of them aren't mined yet. We'll get into the more technicality maybe in our Zoom roundtable. But about 18 million are out in circulation with the availability of 21 million. And they're thinking as it's mined through a lot of the people in the world that are mining this, and we'll talk about that. And they're not mining it like gold in the day, but it's very similar. They're mining it on computers. In mining farms, they're called. That currency has a hardcore limit to it. So by standard definition, Bitcoin is not inflationary, it's deflationary. And the way I like to think of it is right now, and I'll talk about this in a little bit further detail, in the Voyager app, which is a wallet and a place for you to invest. So it stores your money and allows you to invest in different coins, including Bitcoin. They offer a 7% return on your investment per year, paid monthly, for simply having a certain number of Bitcoin. I think it's a Bitcoin is one of the things that they have. 7% for their Voyager token, which is it's a kind of currency that sits on a coin. And we'll get into the details of that in a minute. But they're offering APY, annual percentage yield, on cryptocurrencies. And the thing that you have to keep in mind is if you're in the crypto world and you invest in the crypto world, is it's shielded from inflation because you're dealing with, especially with Bitcoin, a hardcore limit to the amount in circulation. Nobody can go in and raise that. It's been written in the code, if you will, that cannot be changed. And that is one of the reasons why, at least in my belief, and many of the big thought leaders in this space, Bitcoin is huge for potential growth. This will probably be the first holiday season where I'm getting a lot of questions, not because I'm stirring it up, but getting a lot of questions, and you might too, about what is cryptocurrency? From your mom, your aunt, if you have those people still alive, from your grandma, from others, like this cryptocurrency thing, what's going on with it? Why should I even care? So to come back around here, and I really hope this landed for you, the evolution of money shows, and you can get into the history of it, that as currencies were built, humans found a way to control it and control people through it and corrupt it. And one of the arguments people have today is inflation is corruption because we're getting stole from. When you have a certain amount of money in the bank and it loses value very quickly, relatively speaking, in 10 years, it can lose 20, 30% of its value through inflation without you doing anything. That's corruptible. Does that make sense? Bitcoin quenches the corruption. Bitcoin and some of the other cryptocurrencies that have hardcore limits to their availability, meaning they're scarce, they have a scarcity to them, keeps this in alignment. Now let's flip gears here. Hopefully we've done a good job with that, helping you understand that. Let's flip gears here and talk about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and these kind of things. So the first thing that I want to make sure of is what is a principle of what we've been covering. And if you're taking notes, imagine this. I love the way Robert had put this in one of the podcasts that I was watching or listening to. Is if you're taxed at 100% tax rate, if all the income you make has to go to a governing force, authority, you're basically a slave. You have no free will to spend that money the way you want. If at the other end of the spectrum, 0% tax rate, you have full self-ownership, full self-sovereignty. You're completely free. Does that make sense? So what's happened in the world is there's different tax rates, and they include different things. And some of them in like other countries, other than the United States, have a higher tax rate, but they include more in the services they provide to the country. Like they include healthcare and those kind of things. In the United States, especially here in Florida, I have a lower tax rate, but I'm responsible for a lot of these things. And I just want to make sure we made that connection for you, because one point that Robert made in one of the podcasts I was listening to was the fact that if you think about the spectrum of 0 to 100% tax, inflation pushes towards the 100% tax by the devaluation of money. Does that make sense? That was a really powerful illustration for me. I hope it landed for you. And another point he made was this idea of value and time. Money, what is money? Money is retaining value over time. And our focus is really clear, is to assure that money that we've acquired retains its value for the long haul. We've kind of made that point as we're going through our work today. Is this landing for you? Really, really powerful. So as we get into the cryptocurrency discussion and we talk about Bitcoin, how is it actually created and transformed? So Bitcoin is a fully digital currency, has a cap at 21 million Bitcoin, and the way it's transferred, much like transferring money from Zelle to somebody or to PayPal or Apple Cash or anything like that, it's transferred digitally through application, like an app. The Voyager app is the one I recommend. I'll link to that below. So the basic way that you get set up is you go through and you create a wallet. And we're going to talk about this in our business mastery training today, where we talk about cold wallets versus hot wallets and so on. But just think of it as a virtual wallet where you put USD or your currency, and you'll put your currency in there, and then you can go through and hit a button and buy. Once your currency is in that wallet, you can buy other currencies, and it does the exchange rate, and then boom, you're an owner of Bitcoin, you're an owner of Ethereum, you're an owner of Solana, these different types of coins and so forth. And that's generally how it's done. What I'm going to do as a bonus for us today is I'm going to show you how you do that, and you'll be able to see that action actually happen. What I want to make sure, though, is that you understand when they say the blockchain is the technology that Bitcoin uses, that cryptocurrency uses, to exchange information. So the easiest definition of what Bitcoin is, specifically, is think of it like a huge spreadsheet, like an Excel spreadsheet. And in every row of the spreadsheet, there's a few titles. From, to, the amount, a hash, they call it a hash, and a pre-hash. And these are just IDs, basically. Like they're unique identifiers for that particular transaction. Does that make sense? It can get complicated, I know. So at every line, there's a wallet. One, we'll call wallet one, like Charlie's wallet, goes to Bob's wallet. And the amount I'm transferring is 0.2 Bitcoin. And there's an ID created, and then there's a pre-hash, which is the previous transaction's ID. And what it does is it stacks that transaction, adds a new row to the spreadsheet every time a transaction happens. That spreadsheet is available worldwide, and you can view it. Think of it as a giant ledger that's available, and you can search through it worldwide. Unlike with banks, each bank has their own, and there's a batch system that sort of coordinates and aligns the transactions. I know this gets complicated fast, but the idea is very simple. Bitcoin is based on a globally transparent spreadsheet. Bitcoin has a cap to the amount of coins that are available. So it solves for a lot of the issues that we talk about here, especially the red one, scarcity. It also solves, some people have asked, is Bitcoin as trading in cryptocurrency like more corruption? And what they're finding is it's actually less corruptible because there isn't the physical aspect to the cash, where a lot of the corruption happens in the current dollar system. Total side note for you, a lot of people running money, like drug money and so on, they'll go to casinos and they'll put them in the machines and just hit the cash out button to sort of get rid of the dirty money, which is tracked through serial numbers and so on, and get fresh money. Does that make sense? There isn't any way to do that with digital currency. Now, here's where the anonymity kicks in, because you're probably freaking out. Wait, somebody can see my transactions and see what I buy? The wallet itself has a unique ID. But unless they know that you're the owner of the wallet, they would never be able to tell that you're the one transferring money here, there, and everywhere. Does that make sense? So when you set up your wallet, you'll get an ID, and it's a long set of numbers and digits and stuff like that. And that's uniquely yours. Nobody else has that ID. And that's your little identifier to go out and transact with others. Now they make it easy, so you don't have to type that in. They actually have a QR code if you're familiar with those. And you can copy and paste it. But you have to assure that your wallet ID is copied exactly the way it is. Because if there's one digit off and you're sending or receiving currency and you send the wrong wallet ID to somebody, it goes off into a never, never land. Just like if you're sending somebody a bank account and a routing number, if you're familiar with transferring money at all in the current financial system, if you send the wrong bank account, the right routing number, and that bank account legitimately has a account holder for it, that money goes in the wrong account. Very similar. Does that make sense? So the three things that I really want you to be very cognizant of is this. One, a wallet is where you store your money in real life. A digital wallet is where you store your currency in the cryptocurrency world. The way that you get into cryptocurrency at a baseline level, there's a lot more complication to this, but I'm making it simple for you, is you can fire up an app like Voyager. And that's the one I've used that's been the easiest to use and the most compatible, and it's worked the best. And I have a link for that below. You can use an app like Voyager to move money from your bank account, a debit card, a credit card, into your digital cryptocurrency wallet. And then from there, you can buy mainstream coins. I think they have like 60 of them. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, all these different coins. So you may be asking at this point, Char, okay, I get it. You have an app, the Voyager app, that's kind of like your bank account app, and you put money into it. And then in that app, I can swipe and say, buy Bitcoin, buy Ethereum, buy $20 of Bitcoin, buy $20 of Ethereum. And then it takes it out of the US currency part. You'll see it right on the app. And it says, boom, you now own, however much Bitcoin that is. And again, that's not a full Bitcoin because a full single Bitcoin right now is like $59,000. Kind of wish I got into it in more depth in 2014 when it was like $200. Yeah. But Bitcoin, because of its scarcity and the adoption rate and the law of economics, is set to go much bigger than that over the next 3 to 5 years. Of course, we're going to see dips, very volatile. So it's just part of that whole, the whole sort of scene there. But to get it simplified for you, here's what I really want you to pay attention to. Much like a bank app, you move money into a wallet. You move money into your account. In the Voyager app, and I'll show you, actually in the replay, I'll put pictures of this happening, and we'll also be demonstrating this later today as well. But you have the capacity, once the money's in there, to go through and swipe left and say, I want to buy some Bitcoin, buy some Ethereum, buy some of this. Whatever coins that provider has, and Voyager has over 60 of them, boom, you get that. The cool part, and I talked about this earlier, is that you can go through in those apps, the Voyager app, and you can see they have a reward system for certain coins. Like if you put a certain amount of Voyager coin, or token as they call it, if you buy a certain amount of it, 500 Voyager tokens, they will reward you 7% APY, and then they give you reward bonuses as you're buying other things, and they give you referral reward bonuses too. And they pay those out throughout the month. The 15th and the last day of the month is usually how that works. Now keep in mind, Bitcoin and other currencies outside of the US dollar or the typical dollar, or whatever the mechanism of money is that you use, depending on what country you're in, is shielded, Bitcoin specifically, is shielded from inflation. So 7% on Bitcoin is non-inflationary percentage. Does that make sense? I know this can get complicated. So just keep that in mind. If it doesn't make sense for you right now, the links down below will help. We'll be talking this through. I'll try to answer your questions from that perspective. But I really wanted you to understand, like, what is Bitcoin and how it's sort of kept track of and why it's transparent and why it lives into these 5 properties of money. And it's purely digital, and there isn't any way to corrupt it. Like if you tried to inject a line item here where you were like, I have 50 Bitcoin and I'm going to exchange those. The way that the distributed network that keeps track of all these things around the world, there's computers that keep track of this spreadsheet all around the world, would be like, whoa, back up a minute. We're not showing that transaction on any of the other ones. Let's validate it through its hash and pre-hash codes. The next thing you know, it's like, nope, that transaction's invalid. It kicks it out. So a distributed network is the sort of answer to a single central network, which is basically what central banks are. And Robert Breedlove talks a lot about central banks and how the moment we got to central banks is the moment we kind of gave the people running the central banks a little too much power because they can go through. We're only relying on their word and their guarantee, if you will, that they're only printing a certain amount of money, they're only making a certain amount of money available, and those kinds of things. Is that helpful? So hopefully you're seeing that this system is fully transparent, open to the world. You literally can go through and search people's or wallet IDs. If you know the person, you can search their wallet ID and see all the transactions, where they exchange how much. You can't see what they bought necessarily, unless you know the other person's wallet ID. If the wallet ID is a company, then you'd be able to connect that. But it's incredibly anonymous and very transparent. And it's, to come back to the philosophy of what we're talking about today, it's the next evolution for fairness in the world. And I'm not just saying that, it's backed by what we know of the history of money. Does that make sense? So, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum. I covered the basics for you on what it is, what a wallet is, what Bitcoin is, and how you can research what other coins are. Just go into, there's a great site called ledger.com that has a device. We'll talk about this in our next session, a cold wallet, if you will, that lets you see, that lets you understand how each currency has evolved and what its purpose is. For example, Ethereum is a smart contract-based cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is not. And what does smart contract mean? Smart contract means that there's conditional statements that can be put into exchanging of cryptocurrency in the Ethereum world. So think of Ethereum as a type of money, and Bitcoin is another type of money in the digital currency world. Ethereum has a set of rules to it that Bitcoin doesn't have, and that is, hey, if this thing's met, do this with the money. So there's automation built into Ethereum. But if you go into ledger.com, and I'll make sure to link to the Bitcoin ledger documentation and the Ethereum one, you'll start to get the understanding. The way to think about it is to assure that you say, okay, I get it. Bitcoin is the sort of mother of all ships. It's got the most market capitalization. It's got the most, it's super high in comparison to everything else. CoinMarketCap.com can show you the market capitalization on all the different coins that are out there. And Bitcoin is at the very top of it. It was a sort of firstborn going after it. Ethereum has gathered a lot of market cap because it's the first cryptocurrency that has smart contracts involved, and there's a lot that can be done with that. So it's really, really powerful from that perspective. Is that helpful? Too much? Thank you so much for being here. This is not an easy topic to cover, but I hope I'm doing it justice for you. I want to make sure as we go through this that you're getting the essence, just the tip of the iceberg on why it's important and why we're even having this conversation today. Why Bitcoin? Why cryptocurrency? The way that I think about it is that Gary Vee says it, Robert says it, and me as an entrepreneur know it, in that the market, the free market, will determine whether what you have is necessary or not, or wanted. Think about it if you're one of our thought leaders in our mastery community and you're putting out an offer and you're like, this is going to be great. People are going to want this. It's going to really help them. And you put it out, nobody clicks, nobody buys. You got to reword that so the market feels connected to it, to get the momentum for it. We spend a lot of time in our sessions and our training talking about the right way to word things to get people's emotional spark so the market wants it. If the market did not want cryptocurrency, we would not be talking right now about it. And it would not have, Bitcoin would not have gone up to 60K. It's a little low today, but it would not have gone up to 60K if there wasn't some necessity to it, some future to it. Does that make sense? Gary Vee always talks about that. If you're putting stuff out there and it's not being seen, then the market doesn't want it the way you're putting it out there. You got to change it up. We have a lot of people I'm working with right now that they've got great rhythms going on. They've got great things going in the world and they're getting nothing, crickets, or just a few people clicking, going after it. And it isn't until we get that right sensation, that right energy, and the right wording, or the right dialogue on video, in a sales video, that you'll start to see things ignite. And you just got to test and measure. My point with all that is Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies have gained massive traction. There's a lot of people speculating and playing dangerously in this space. But as a rule, I hope you're sensing why through the history of money and the 5 properties of money and what humans do. Just humans do it. They have the irresistible urge for control and corruption. Unfortunately, that those two kind of come together in the history of things. And I'm not trying to bring judgment to any of that. That's just if you read history and study history, you'll see that as a common theme. When things got out of control and there was a loss of time and trust, I want to make sure we put in here as well. Value and trust is another way of thinking of money. When a government loses the trust of people in their currency, boom. Next thing you know, that currency is a joke. Venezuela is a great example of that. If you want to study and see where people lost in hyperinflation and so on, people lost trust in money, and then it went back to barbaric standards. There's an example for you. It's really, really critical that you get these elements of this. So cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and the way it uses the blockchain, very, very powerful for that. How you get involved, and I'm going to end our training with a basic strategy for you. How you get involved is by going through an app like Voyager. It's probably the easiest one I've tested, and it's the most functional, meaning it works. You get the Voyager app, go to Voyager, the links are down below, but go to Voyager, the Voyager app website, or go on your phone and look for the Voyager app. And then you get that, and then you connect a bank account to it. Now we'll go through best practices in our next session about security for that and practices for that, but you get a bank account connected to it. And when you go into trade to buy Bitcoin, for example, you can do it one time or you can do a recurring buy. So if you're ignited, we'll say, around cryptocurrency based on our training today, the easiest, simplest strategy, and again, this is education purposes only, I'm not a financial advisor, the easiest, simplest strategy that I put into play for me, and I'm putting it in play with my family, is to put in, over time, a certain amount per month. And so maybe for you, and you want to make sure that that amount isn't going to hurt if you lose it. So for some people, it's $10 a month, and they're just automatically having it take $10 a month out of their bank account and putting it into Bitcoin on an automatic basis. For others, like me, it's like $500 a month. There's a complicated part to that strategy, but it's basically $500 a month, and that's $6,000 a year. And then I rebalance that every so often to make sure. But I believe in Bitcoin, and I'm putting in a certain amount per month automatically to have a stake, if you will, in Bitcoin. So the simplest strategy is to go in, get the Voyager app, I'll link to that below, and then connect the bank account. We'll talk about the security of how that would be best for best practices in our next session, and then set an automatic buy. If you're only going to go into one cryptocurrency, make it Bitcoin, because that's the standard, if you will, has the biggest market cap. And if you do a lot of the research that I've done, you'll find that it has the staying power as the sort of mothership of cryptocurrencies. Other ones that are real popular that the bulk of people feel will not go to zero, as it's called, would be Ethereum, Cardano, and there's a couple others, and I'll make sure that I'll link to those below for you. So that's the concept. The simple strategy I'm living into is, and the terminology for that is, by the way, it's called dollar cost averaging. There's another way of thinking about it. And all that means is every month we're putting in 50 or 500 or whatever it is for you. And if Bitcoin goes up and down, that's okay. We're buying it. $50 buys more when it's down. $50 buys less when it's up. And over time, we're not really paying attention to this. But over time, what we're seeing, as we've seen the last 13 years, is Bitcoin's doing that. And its bottom line is going up over time. And that's what they're expecting. The more you hear about it, the higher chance, because it's got a real scarcity to it, that the value of it's going to go up. And we're right in the front end of what we call the mass adoption curve. It's where the innovators were in 2013, 14, 15, or before. The early adopters were in 2015, 16, 17, 18, all the way up till now. And now we're in the kind of the end of the early adopter phase as it gets mass adopted. And how do we know it's going to be mass adopted? The moment it becomes easily exchangeable through that Voyager credit card, debit card I mean, is the moment people be, all right, I need to get serious about this and get into it. And so there'll be more people playing in the cryptocurrency world. And once they understand a lot of the principles of what we've covered today, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, there's a philosophical backing, a purposeful, productive, and I would say profitable, we'll talk a lot about that in our next session, backing to why cryptocurrency is something we need to pay attention to. And I believe in it. And I'm tired of getting stolen from through inflation. That's the magic going on here. So Dollar Anything says we need to review this one more time. We talked about the 5 phases of history. The barter trade, coins where there was a recognizable device, a coin, that was durable, portable, divisive, meaning it had division, that you could go through and give them one gold coin or a smaller silver coin or something like that. And there was scarcity to it. There's only so much metal available on the planet. Then we talked about the paper money. Increased portability, but there was a promise made when the dollar bill was created that it would be backed by gold until it wasn't. 1971. And today, when we exchange currency, so often there isn't any real dollars flown around. It's just a spreadsheet transaction. Amazon has 20 more dollars. I have 20 less dollars in my account. And that's the basis for what purely digital currency is. And that's the sort of format for it. That's the easiest way I can think to explain it. And if you study the blockchain and the way that technology works that Bitcoin's based on, that's it. Five columns and a row is a transaction, and it's fully transparent, and you can go ahead and search it if you want. It's really, really powerful that way. The 5 parts of money: divisive, durable, recognizable, portable, and scarce. And scarce is where we got loose in the last 50 years with availability for humans to decide, hey, we need more money in supply, let's just print it, put it in the database. I think we've nailed it out of the park with the irresistible urge for control and the idea that the metric system and the kilogram, they're systems of measurement. Bitcoin is the metric system of money. It can't be expanded or contracted in certain countries. You can't print more in a certain country, for example. Next, we enter cryptocurrency. Talked about what cryptocurrency is, the blockchain, the idea that slave and self-ownership. Slave is where 100% of your income goes off to a governing force or an authority. Self-ownership is where you keep all your income, but maybe there's nobody governing you. That can get dangerous. And then somewhere in between is where most countries sit. We're somewhere in between 40% or 60% tax rate to a 20%, 30% tax rate with variable amount of services and things that go on, like fire departments, police, those kind of things, and the availability for a governing institution to help us. We talked a lot about kind of a couple of definitions of money: value plus trust, value over time. We also really went into deep about the blockchain, fully transparent, open to the world. And I really want to make sure as we wrap up our training today that landed for you. The way to keep people from corruption, is probably ways to corrupt the transparency of this, is to have a open source, completely viewable ledger system. And the way that you get into it and out of it is through your unique wallet ID with your unique passphrase. We didn't talk about the other aspect of the wallet ID. Is there's a passphrase that you typically have, like a password, that locks that currency in your wallet to you. And you do not want to give that currency away. Similarly, you would not want to give away your password to your bank account. Does that make sense? You just don't want to give that away because people could go in there and transfer money out of it. The simple strategy is very simply get the Voyager app, put a few dollars in there, or $100 or $20, whatever it is, and that's it. That's all you need to do. And go in and trade something. Become an owner in Bitcoin. Just say trade $20 in the Bitcoin and hang on to it. If you want to have it recurring, the Voyager app offers that. Many of the apps do. Just say continually buy. Continually buy this. $20 every month would be a good thing to do. Again, I'm not a financial analyst. I'm not a financial advisor. This is for purely educational purposes. I have to say that. And that ends our training today. And I hope this landed for you. And I hope it ignited for you what it has for me. The reasons why we really need to take cryptocurrencies seriously. It solves a lot of humanity issues. And it also provides mechanisms for us to go through and create purposeful revenue in the world. So many times I've been reading all these different applications of what's coming down the pipeline with cryptocurrencies. And one of them is games that you play, that a lot of people play anyway, that you earn money in. And that there's a few games that are coming out right now that if you play them for a couple hours a day, they can meet your break even. The amount of money you need to survive per year. And some people are like, games, I don't think games are the thing. But if you play a game that's multiplayer, which some of these are, that's connection. And it's just another avenue for revenue creation. It's amazing where the world's going. We did not get into NFTs, non-fungible tokens, but what a non-fungible token is a way for you to have, without argument, real ownership in a piece of art, a music clip. That, think of it like if you ever go to an auction and you buy a very expensive autographed one copy. Maybe it's a baseball card with somebody who's passed away and it's in a big frame and there's a certificate of authenticity with it. That certificate is your thing, but it's only with you. Does that make sense? With NFTs, it's public knowledge that you're the owner of this on an agreeable worldwide platform that's built on blockchain. And I know that's a lot to throw at you, but it's finally here. You have real ownership of something and it's fully recognized worldwide through the power of NFTs. And that's just one application of it through the lens of art. Really, really powerful. So your action list today is to get my beginner's list of resources, and I'm going to make it available down below. Prioritize your learnings and skill building. You'll see in the list of resources I give, there's an area for philosophy. There's an area for what is cryptocurrency. There's an area for the types of cryptocurrency. There's an area for how you make income with it. There's a speculative area of it, like how people are making crazy amounts of income, but they're putting a lot of risk on the line. And then there's applications for it. And I've tried to categorize that, and I'll keep that up to date for you in that regard. And you need to define your vision, strategy, plan, and action. So a big part of what's coming down the pipeline for 2022 is that I'm building 3 new levels of service just for cryptocurrency people. And we'll still maintain what we do in our mastery community. But the first level of service is where the notes that I take, which are very intense, and I keep them very easy. If you've ever seen my notes, you understand. I'm making those available through a subscription, a monthly subscription, where I'm going to be putting new notes, most likely to be in Basecamp. It might be in a tool called Discord, so that you can go through and not have to do the hours of research that I do, but just skim the notes, get the major distinctions, so that you get more depth on a consistent basis. So it's what I call cryptocurrency weekly mastery. And you'll see down below a link to a page that will tell you what that offer is all about. And of course, Master Community members, I'm rewarding you. You'll love the coupon code I've got for you there. The next offer is cryptocurrency monthly mastery training. So what I'm doing in 2022, next year, as of the recording of this is November of 2021, is having an extra training every month where I'm sharing more cryptocurrency with more detail outside of our other 2 trainings, our health, wealth, and happiness, and our business mastery trainings. I didn't want to incorporate that there because some people are just not interested in cryptocurrency, but there's such a need for it. And in the end of first quarter of 2022, I'll be starting a cryptocurrency mastermind. There's only going to be room for 8. So right now, you'll see on the page, there's a way for you to get on the waiting list for that. As soon as January hits, I'll be putting out an application for that, and there'll be some pre-qualifiers for it. It's going to be pretty expensive, but the goal set will be through the mastermind, I'm going to be bringing in people that teach us trading algorithms, cryptocurrency best practices, as a hobby, as a full-time job, well, part-time job actually, and these kind of things where you can actually create income through cryptocurrency and leverage it in what it's evolving to be in the world, and we'll be right on the front end of that. That's how serious I'm taking cryptocurrency. So that's a big part of the vision, strategy, and plan, is if you're considering cryptocurrency as part of your rhythm moving forward, there's 3 different levels for you. One is just getting my notes, and you can watch the videos and review my notes with those. That's videos that other people have put out. I take extensive notes, and they're really easy to follow. Second is our cryptocurrency mastery training. That does include the notes. So if you decide to get that, you do get the notes every week as well. You get access to that as well as the cryptocurrency training. And we do have Q&As set for 2022 with cryptocurrency, meaning that we'll go over a topic in the training, much like we did here, and then we'll have a specific Q&A session just for that training and any other questions that you have in cryptocurrency. So good. And then as 2022 evolves, we'll be forming an 8-person mastermind, and I'll be bringing in people who are on the front of this, who've been in this for a while. One of the people that I'm working with, that I'm actually coaching at a high performance level, is a cryptocurrency algorithmic trader who has been trading since 2015 and has made millions, literally millions. And he'll be sharing some of the things that you need to keep in mind, and those kinds of things as well. So big part of this is your net worth is equal to your network. And I just want to make sure you get that framing, you understand what's coming. Number 4, automate. As we talked about, you just, if nothing else, the Voyager app and $20 a month. Just to have a foot in cryptocurrency. Chances are really slim that it's going to go to zero. Chances are very high, based on what we've covered today, that it's going to expand and grow something fierce. And 5th, and I already covered that, is join our crypto mastery path. And again, there's a link for that below. If you want to get in and go after that, feel free to click. If you have any questions, just let me know. That being said, this ends Cryptocurrency 101, starting from scratch. Bitcoin is the metric system of money. We've covered the humanity of it, the philosophy of it, the history of it. We've dove into the blockchain and then how Bitcoin sits on the blockchain and how the transactions happen and how many of the different coins operate on the blockchain. It's a very similar model. My favorite mentor, and I'll end with this, is Robert Breedlove. I've got extensive notes on his work. I'm happy to share that with you. Soon that'll move over to the subscription as we continue to evolve and support and serve you. So thank you so incredibly much for being here. I'm sending you tons of positive, loving, healthy energy. And again, my job on this beautiful planet is to help you live purposefully, passionately, positively, productively, and profitably. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.